Welcome to Alive to Thrive here on KNSJ 89.1 FM. Today we have the honor of having Reverend Rolland Slade with us. He's from the board of directors of Amikas. Rolland, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mitch, for inviting me. I'm Rolland Slade. I serve as the lead pastor of Meridian Baptist Church in El Cajon, and I serve on the board of directors, of Amikas. And I also serve on the regional task force, the continuum care board, as second vice chair of that. But also, I represent the faith community within the regional task force continuum of care council, and a bunch of other stuff, but that I do around the community, including being a little league administrator and park and recs guy. So yeah, it's fun.
How did the game go today?
The games are going. We have a few games today. We're finishing up our pool play, getting ready to go into the double elimination for our district tournament, which will eventually lead to the section tournament and go on from there.
Very nice. And you have worked very diligently. I included some of your bio in the description of the show, but you have quite the background in working and helping with the community. When did you feel this calling on your life? Where did that start? Did it start early on in your childhood, or was there something that happened that kind of guided you into the positions that you've held?
It really started with my childhood, Mitch. I just have to admit that I didn't realize that my parents were activists, and they were just my parents, and I didn't realize that until I got older. Probably when I was about 17 or 18, I realized that these group of people that would come over to our house on Sunday nights, that they were with, one group or another, and I just, that's just the way I grew up, to be involved in the community. My mom was a team mom on my little league team and a room mother in school, and they knew the principal of my high school and invited the principal over to our house for dinner. And so that's just the way I grew up.
That's a huge blessing to have parents that gave you that good guidance. With my humanitarian work, it started with being part of the Boy Scouts and then working towards my Eagle Scout project. And I did a humanitarian drive. It was after one of the first large tsunamis that hit back in 2003, and they needed hygiene kits. And so I went around to the community and gathered hygiene kit, all the supplies for hygiene kits. But I also feel blessed that I had the guidance of good parents to help lead me to the man that I am today. With the work that you've done over the last few years, I'd like just to touch on some of it. You've worked in a wide range, where you worked with the California Wellness Foundation's violence prevention program. You worked with the Hospital of San Diego and the San Diego County Office Education's Champion for Children Award, and all the congregations together, ACT Visionary Leader Award. You've won so many awards. Is there a specific award that you're most proud of?
I think if I had to narrow it down, it would probably be the most recent one, where I was honored as being the Impact Person of the Year for the city of El Cajon in this past year, 2022. That was surprising to me. I didn't even know that I was even being considered. And to get a call from the city manager asking if I would be willing to accept the award really kind of shook me up. I thought he was calling about something else, that maybe something we were doing or hadn't done or were doing wrong within the community, the emergency sleeping cabin community. And so I just I was really stunned, and that really was a shocking thing to me, to be considered that, and then to get that award and to have my family being present with us or with me when I was honored that way by the city of El Cajon. It's kind of I'm a native San Diegan, and I grew up in La Mesa, and so in a way, El Cajon is kind of my adopted hometown, if you will, or home community. Um, I've lived in East County since 1965, and I've been pastoring the church over 20 years, and so I just didn't. It's kind of like I just did what I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, what I feel I'm called to do, and to be recognized by the city as a person that is making an impact on the city, especially if it's a city that I don't live in. So that was really, really special.
That's a huge accomplishment, and I can see why that would be so impactful to be recognized that way. And from our previous show, you're such a humble man. It's like you said, you got the phone call and you were expecting something else, not expecting to receive an award. But truly, the work that you've done over the course of your life has been phenomenal, and the lives that you've touched. How did you originally get connected with Amikas?
Actually, I saw an article in the newspaper about the emergency sleeping cabins that they had made or that they had built. One was at Ferret 44th Street over in City Heights, and one was downtown. And they were, displaying these emergency sleeping cabins that would be available. Or, they were trying to encourage people to consider them as a way to help those who were living in homelessness.
And
we had a vacant lot at the church, and so I just followed up, left a voicemail message, and they called me back, and we start talking, and we eventually built a display model on the campus so that people in East County could come and see what they were like.
And that's so important because I feel like if more and more and more people followed the program and the structures that your church has put into place, if you have that extra lot or that extra piece of land, there are ways of getting the supplies and volunteer works to put it all together. And it's just a matter of perspective and vision. And I think that's amazing that you saw a news article and just you followed that guidance. Another huge point that I would like to touch on with the work that I've done with the homeless over the years, a big part of the homeless women and children population are because of women who are escaping domestic abuse. And that there's this stigma around homelessness of, well, these people made poor life choices, they are drug addicts, they are mentally ill, all these things, when in reality, these women are fleeing for their lives in some instances to try and save their children from domestic abuse. And that's why they're homeless. And so to provide emergency shelters for women and children, I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Mitch. I mean, I agree with you. And, it's been for me personally seeing the ladies who have come in to live at the village. When one of the young ladies, we opened the door of the cabin and she saw a set of bunk beds and she just began to cry. She didn't even walk in. She had to get herself together. We needed to give her 15, 20 minutes to get herself together to cross the threshold.
Wow.
She had been with her daughters living in a car for 4 months, and to see beds. And we're thinking, she's upset because there's only 2 beds in there and it's her 2 daughters. So they need 3. And she's just like, no, you can't imagine. She says, we're going to be able to sleep with our legs stretched out without worrying about somebody tapping on the window or driving by and honking or flashing their lights. So we're actually going to be able to rest. And, just the experience that she shared just really kind of touched our hearts. Like, wow, we hadn't thought about that. You really just kind of, you think you begin to do something and then all of a sudden it just kind of blossoms. And that's really what happened with that.
That's such an inspiring story, and it's so true. And I was talking about this on Talk of the Town earlier today. We were discussing homelessness, and I actually mentioned that I was going to have you on Alive to Thrive today. Um, and people don't recognize when it comes to that stigma I was talking about with homelessness and mental illness. People, they a lot of times people don't have a lot of the mental disorders until after they're homeless. It's from being homeless. I see you
Oh,
nodding.
yeah.
It's from being homeless. The stress, the anxiety, that constant, that constant fear that it pushes people over the edge mentally. And it's hard to, I mean, I can only imagine living in a car with 2 children for 4 months that that touches my heart that she just wept out of gratitude. That is so powerful.
And she wasn't, she was working. She doesn't do no drugs, alcohol, but she had a $300 increase in her rent in her apartment put on her, and financially she just couldn't handle it. So that just threw all of her finances apart. And of course, now she's living in her, when she had to move into her car, she had to take care of her daughter, so she lost her job. All these things started to just kind of snowball on her. And this was a safe place. The village was a safe place. And I'm blessed to say it was for her, because just this last week, she and her daughters moved back out into an apartment because she had a chance to get herself together. She got another job. She went through and just took care of herself. Her daughters started to blossom, and they were growing vegetables, growing strawberries there in the garden, in the raised bed gardens at the church, playing in the playhouse, helping the other ladies clean their front porches in the village, and really just came out from being these shy little girls that we first met, over these last 3 months, 3.5 months that they were with us. And now they're in their own place. So we told them, you guys are you're not just moving out, you're graduating into self-sufficiency, but we're not done. And when I say we're not done, we haven't lost our connection with them. They're still part of our family. If there's anything they need, they can still contact us, contact the folks within the church that were also helping, because it wasn't, as I think I told you on the last show, it's not a religious program. It's what we're doing to fulfill the mission and calling on our lives. And when we do that, we don't have to make sure that they come to Bible study. If we love them, they want to be with us. And if we're in Bible study, they'll want to be there. And that's what ended up happening. So they became part of the community of the congregation, as well as being in the community of the village.
Well, and I think that's so impactful, that even though the village is on church property, that's not necessarily a requirement, but because of the atmosphere that you've created, they naturally want to be involved with that community, and they're pulled in to being part of that community. And one word that you used that really touched my heart was how the girls blossomed, right? Because there's so many metaphors and symbolisms in the blossoming of, say, a rose. In order for a rose to thrive, and I'm sure you understand this very well as a pastor, that you need to have a firm foundation. You need to have good soil. It talks about it in the Bible. You need to have good soil. You need to have good foundation in order for that seed to take root, in order for it to grow outward so that it can receive the light that it needs and to blossom, as you said. And to witness these people blossoming because of the foundation that you're giving them is beautiful. And really, when you talk about the core of homelessness, and from all the research that I've done, I truly believe that it's working through and healing the trauma that initially led them into those situations. And every situation's different, but there's always an underlying trauma somewhere that led to that happening in her certain circumstance. And we discussed this on Talk of the Town today, and that with the house increases and it, like, that extra $300 turned her whole world upside down. and we need to find ways to make sure that if the cost of living is going to continue to grow exponentially and the pay is going to continue to stay the same, it's unfeasible, and we're going to continue to have this issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to continue, and it's going to, and it not only is going to continue, but it's going to grow because people are going to continue to fall into this financial deficit. Yeah, so I really, it's been exciting to see, and one of the other things that we're doing as part of our church training, we had a group of volunteers go through mental health first aid, so we could talk about seeing people and how we handle, or not handle, how we talk to people. And then the next step of that is doing the QPR training that goes along with suicide prevention. And then the next thing is we're actually partnering with Southern California Seminary to do what's called Call to Care. We're actually training our volunteers to create a lay counseling center within the church. So it's there for our congregation, but it's going to be there for the ladies in the village and those in the community. How do you talk to people? How do you counsel people? It's not professional counseling, but it's a way, it's equipping us to be, again, the people that we are in the community that we're in, to talk to the people who come to the church for various things that we have going on.
And that's so important. It goes right back to healing that underlying trauma. And that's so awesome that you're training and working with your staff. Communication is everything. The way that we communicate with one another and knowing how to communicate effectively, and to even have a resource, you create a safe space with the community. And then within the community, you're creating relationships for these women and children so that they can confide and work through these past traumas or issues, and actually just sometimes people just need to talk to someone to listen.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just they need to, especially after living in your car for 4 months, like there's a lot of buried emotions, I'm sure, that needed to be just brought to the surface and worked through in a positive way. And so real quick, I'll just remind our listeners, you're listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM. This is Alive to Thrive. We're not on this earth merely to survive. We are alive to thrive. I'm honored to have on Reverend Rolland Slade with this from Amikas, excuse me. And we're discussing the village that they've created for emergency shelters for women and children. From the last interview, I believe that you had 4 cabins built. Have you expanded beyond that, or has your main focus been focusing on the training and building the community to help work through the emotions that come with the women that come into the shelters?
Well, no, since we last been on a show with you, we completed the construction of 6 cabins, and actually 7. One of the ones that originally was down at the downtown near the structure, the sprung structure by that the Alpha Project was in charge of, that is now cabin 0 on our property. And cabin 0 serves as like a security cabin. It's also the cabin where the refrigerator is, where dry storage of food, microwave, coffee pot, toaster, and there's a desk for the case manager, who is a staff member of Homestart, who's contracted with the city of El Cajon to be the housing navigator and the homeless outreach service provider. So we completed all 6 at the end of 2022. We had ladies begin to move in. We have since completion of everything, we've had now 11 ladies live there in the village. There are 5 cabins currently being occupied. Today, they're cleaning out the cabin where this young lady and her children, her 2 girls, were in, so that on Tuesday of next week, we'll have another lady move in with her children. That's be a handoff through Homestart. We now have had 2 ladies who have graduated into permanent housing. 3 ladies made the decision on their own to leave the program or to leave the village It wasn't quite what one had expected. One just felt that, it wasn't for her. And the other one, I believe she relocated out of the city. We've actually had one child born in the village.
Really? That's amazing.
And, yeah, I'm kind of, because this young lady, she moved in on a Friday, and Sunday, she was pregnant, has a child, pregnant with a child, moves in on Friday. Sunday, her water breaks and she has a baby. And by Tuesday, they were back. She's back out of the hospital with her newborn baby. And she said to me, she said, "Pastor, I am so grateful that I have a place for my baby to lay her head."
Wow.
I'm like, I know a story about a baby that didn't have a place to lay his head. So, thank you. And she's like, she goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm glad you're here. Anything we can do as a congregation to support you, we're willing to do. But thank you." And she says, "No, thank you for." She said, "We were just so happy to be here." And her and her older daughter is there, and the children in the village play together. So yeah, that for me, that's
Yeah,
kind of,
I feel it.
it's like, wow, it's like we really did this. We really mean. Otherwise this little baby would have been born in a car on the street, or would have been born in a hospital, but then released to go back into a car. And Child Protective Services, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of there's a negative stigma to Child Protective Services. But having worked for the county and having interacted with CPS folks, the last thing they want to do is to pull a child from a home or separate a child from their parents, because that means that truly the child is in danger. And when they make that determination, that puts a lot. That the system, it's not like, okay, the child's out of danger, here you can have your child back. That brings with it a process, and the parents have to go through that process to get that child back. So here are, in that village that we have ladies who have been, as you even said, kind of under the radar, because they can't wave a flag saying, "Hey, we have our children living with us in a car," because that's not what, that it's not something our society approves of. So they're at risk of losing their children. We have another mother with her child, who we were able to get the child back in school, with the help of the school district. Just sharing the concern, and this young man, of course, he's behind in school, but now he's back in school, looking forward to school in the fall. And if they are still on the property of the church, the bus will pick him up at the church. So he's just excited. They were like, "Oh wow, how's he going to react?" Because he's been out of school for a number of years, not just a week or two, but a number of years he's been out of school. So he's behind. Well, fortunately, we have a lot of second or English language learners in the Cajon Valley School District. So there's a lot of children that are behind, that are of his age in the class. So he's not going to be he's not going to be an anomaly, or he's not going to stick out as being his age in the grade that he's going to be in. He will be with another group of children that are like him, same age, who are dealing with what he's dealing with. So again, that's exciting to have the partnership with the school district, to have them understand, here's where we're trying to do. It's the vision of making a difference in the community that I think is we're all on the same page.
That's fantastic. And to go back to the mother, that she moved in on a Friday and had the baby on Sunday. I believe everything happens for a reason. We just need to find the reason behind why things happen.
Oh, yeah.
And right. And just imagine if she had been still living in her car and her water broke, what type of circumstances that baby very easily could have died, if she wasn't able to make it to a hospital. And especially having another child that she was caring for at the same time. And so that's not only that timing is just that's incredible. That saved that child's life very well much, could have, and you gave a place for her to be able to rest peacefully after the child was born. And to touch on with the child you were mentioning on going back to school, after 2020, and especially with the previous situation where the rent went up and she wasn't able to pay the rent after 2020 and the pandemic, so many people lost their jobs. There are a lot of children that are behind in their schooling. And so it's to be able to have these different connections with these different organizations and have everyone on the same page is incredible to make the impact that you're making. So from the last time we talked, you went from 4 to 6 houses. Do you have plans? Does Amikas have plans to expand working with other churches or to continue to expand on the same property?
Well, we're actually considering both. We're looking for additional properties in the city of El Cajon. We're also working with faith communities throughout San Diego who are interested, encouraging them to work with their city council or to figure out in the city they're in. Some are in San Diego, different council districts within San Diego. Some are on the unincorporated part of San Diego County. So there's different government agencies that they need to work through to get the declarations that we were able to get in El Cajon. Ideally, if another faith community or two in El Cajon comes up saying, yes, we'd be interested, we have the infrastructure already in place in the city of El Cajon to begin building cabins on their property. So that's kind of the first stop. And then the second is we're willing to go to any community and talk to them, tell them what we've done, how we've done what we were able to do, and work with them. And then, part of, well, you probably have, in my background, one of the other organizations I'm a part of is YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard, and working with other faith communities that are interested in doing maybe emergency sleeping cabins up to like Bethel AME. We're about to build some units on their property, not sleeping cabins, but regular housing units on the property of Bethel AME over in Logan Heights. That project has been in the works for about 3 years, and we're about to really just get that going and build those units that will eventually house some veterans and there'll be an on-site manager, and it'll eventually provide some economic stimulus to the congregation. And the pastor there, Harvey Vaughn, is the pastor at Bethel AME, has a vision to open a grocery store, get a bank to move into the community. So really to revitalize that community, the community of Logan Heights. So that's exciting too, to be a part of that. I'm sorry, Mitch, you accidentally muted yourself.
I was pulling up a quick news clip that I would like to share from 2022 of when these cabins first came into place. Would you mind if I share this?
Oh, no, go right ahead.
So this is from San Diego 7 News. Make sure the
Meridian Baptist Church in El Cajon. Homeless women and their children will soon have a place to call their own at Meridian Baptist Church in El Cajon.
After years of planning and months of hard work by countless volunteers, a long-awaited mini cabin village is finally done. NBC7's Amber Frias joins us with a look.
4 months in a backlot at Meridian Baptist Church, it was all hands on deck. While some were more experienced than others,
I used a staple gun for the first time.
They all had one thing in common: wanting to help their community.
It's going to help so many people. Mothers, children's get out from the streets, having a good night's sleep, feeling safe in their own little four walls, away from the weather, the coldness. It's can't say enough.
Led by Amikas, a group that helps women and children have a safe place to sleep at night, community volunteers helped build 6 cabins for unsheltered women.
A place that they are loved and valued and secure, and to know that there are people that are on their side and want to help them.
The project had been years in the making. Amikas first proposed it to the city 5 years ago. Then, in 2020, after Meridian Church gave them the green light to build a demonstration cabin on their site, the city council finally approved their plan.
It's been a long time, a lot of advocacy, a lot of people coming together, feeling like this is the right thing to do. To create a new option for housing.
The mini cabins will include a bed, a desk, and a computer. They will also count with Wi-Fi and heaters.
Our mission as a church is to love people and to be a blessing in this community. And that's what these cabins are going to do. They're going to show our love and be a blessing to the lives of the people who go through the cabins.
Now that the cabins are complete, Homestart, a nonprofit that provides housing for young mothers, will refer clients to stay in the cabins. Those clients will be able to stay for up to 90 days.
I'm excited for our village, but I'm excited that there will be others that will watch this and say, well, why can't we do it at our church or on our property and multiply?
Now, these cabins are 12 by 12 with 96 square feet of living space, and they count with electricity, but no plumbing. The organization tells me that the residents will be able to use the church's facilities, and mobile showers will be making their rounds. For now, reporting from El Cajon, Amber Frias, NBC7.
Items inside the cabin have been donated by the community. The group is still accepting donations. If you are interested in helping, head to our website for more information, NBC7.com.
So I just wanted to take a moment to just to share that and to show how, just to give our audience the visual of how much you as a group have accomplished. And that is one of the things that the more and more that I have worked as a radio show producer and a talk show host and interviewing so many great people such as yourself, there are so many people out there that want to help those who are suffering, that are afflicted. The biggest issue that I've seen is the disconnect between the people who need help and the people who want to help, and making sure that those are connected. How are the women brought to you? Is that through the organizations that you've mentioned with the caseworkers?
Yeah, they are referred to Homestart from the county, from even if they call the church, we will refer them to Homestart, give them the contact information so they can reach out to the outreach worker and then go through the process of, doing the ISPDAT and go through all the protocols of being assessed as someone living in homelessness, because they end up in the HMIS system. So we can actually track their progression from being on the street into permanent supportive housing or permanent housing, how they exit the system. And, that's one of the things of being a part of the RTFH. I get the monthly reports of how many people are entering the system and who are becoming homeless, and then the number of people that are exiting the system. And, we have yet to get to a month where we have more people are exiting the system than people entering the system. And I really think this is a model. This could really be something, if we can move and develop these, because these emergency sleeping cabins is what I mean. It took us 2 years or almost 3 years because of the pandemic, because we had a period of time where we couldn't get together. We couldn't even build together the supply chain of the things that we needed to build the cabins. We had to deal with economics and the cost of a cabin. We're talking about a cabin that originally was about $4,500 to produce. that's now upwards closer to 10,000.
Wow.
But we are blessed. There are partners that we have who have literally donated brand new material for us to use to bring that $10,000 number, if we were to actually go out and purchase it, down to about 8,500. So that's a $4,000 increase over a 3-year period. I mean, I don't know the math of that, but that's pretty substantial. And then, since Amber Frias did that story, there was another foundation that saw that, came out, checked it out, said it was really something real. And, Amber talked about the ladies are going to use the mobile showers. Well, this foundation helped us as a church to build permanent showers, to remodel 2 restrooms. And now we have 2 shower rooms, one in each of these restrooms that are available to the ladies so they can shower. They don't have to wait for the mobile trailer to be hooked up. They can literally go into the shower rooms, shower, 7 days a week. So they can shower, before they go to work, when they get home, whenever it is they want to. And that's a bonus for us. I mean, this foundation it was a faith-based foundation. They wanted to help with the infrastructure of the church. We don't take any government dollars. It's just been, the government dollars go to Home Start. They're contracted with the city. The regional task force has been a partner. They helped Amikas to buy some of the materials that went into the cabins. We've had donations of labor and materials for the cabins. So, we're not taking, again, I think it's a bonus. We don't take tax dollars. In fact, everything we purchased to go into the cabins, we bought in the city of El Cajon. So we added to the tax base of El Cajon. I always remind my good friend, Mayor Bill Wells, Bill, we're not taking from the city. We're giving our percentage back because we want to be good neighbors. And that's the other thing, Mitch. It's been a blessing to us. Our the neighbors to the church initially thought, oh, it's gonna be kind of a stigmatized and it's gonna lower their property value. But when they saw the cabins and they're colorful, and even our congregation saw that, and so that we've gone through remodel project. We put in all new windows. We did roofs over. We did solar, did trim, and our neighbors have done the same. So it's kind of like, wait a minute, the cabins look nicer than the rest of the community. So
Wow.
we better step up our game. And so that's kind of been fun too, to see the revitalization of the community, because we're taking the time to do something like that and really be neighborly. And so it's just, I was really thrilled. One of our neighbors who wanted to make some changes to his fencing, he referred to his fencing, the fencing change they were going to make was going to match the windows of the church. And I thought, he didn't have to do that. He could have any color he wanted, any way he wanted. But I mean, that just really touched my heart that he wanted to be part of, we have the white picket fences in front of the village, that it's all just really kind of coming together. This community cares for people.
Absolutely. And it's like you lit a spark and just watched it grow and light a fire in everyone's hearts. I'm going to remind our listeners, you're listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM. I'm your host, Mitchell Murphy. This is Alive to Thrive. Today, we're interviewing Reverend Rolland Slade, member of the board of directors of Amikas, and we're discussing emergency housing for women and children. For more information, you can go to amikas.org. And Rolland, it's as you were describing all of that, you've gone through the process, you've gone through the work, and especially since the pandemic, the cost of wood prices has skyrocketed. But asking you shall receive, knocking shall be open unto you, right? And if you ask and you put it out there, things fall into place more than you would think. It's just a matter of taking that step of action. And now that you, Amikas has built this system and this framework, and you've proven that it works, and you've proven that it not only does it benefit all these women, but it's also benefiting the community as well. That it can inspire other churches and other faith organizations to do similar projects. Have you ever heard of Charles Durrett by chance?
Yes. Well, the last show we were on together, and Charles was really inspiring. I ordered 2 of Charles's books right after that, read them, chewed them up, recommended them to others. And in fact, as we designed the hardscape or the landscaping of the village, of the Meridian Amikas village, and I thought of Charles and some of the things I read from him. And so one of the things that's incorporated in the village as we're getting ready to landscape it is there's no straight paths, for one, because no one came straight from their life experience to the village. So there's not going to be no straight paths. There's going to be opportunities within, the starfish story is kind of the mobilizing story behind the village. And so from an aerial, kind of putting a drone over the village, the vision that I have is that the hardscape will look like a starfish, and the middle of the village is going to be the center of that starfish. But in each one of the little turns between the legs of the starfish, there'll be learning centers for the kids who are, if they're riding a tricycle through the village, they'll be able to stop and play with something and learn, so that it's not just wasted space, but it's space that is used to really enhance their lives, so that the experience of living in the village is a positive experience, a learning experience. I'm blessed. My wife is a child development teacher. So, I kind of got an in-house expert. So relying on her, would it be cool to have sand here, or, a water table here, and those types of things? Because right now there's a small little, like a mini cabin, a mini version of the cabins in the center of the village that the children play in. It's kind of that playhouse. So it's kind of like a cabin within the cabins. And, the kids played in it. I mean, the kids playing it all the time. But that's been there was really an inspiration. Charles was really an inspiration to me, and looking at the symbolism within the village that he has built in the co-housing. And then also, as part of that, another motivation that came out of the conversation with Charles and just reading his material is that we asked the ladies in the village to help us form the rules. And, the rules aren't, you shall not do this, it's like, we're in this community to be a community of support and love and communication. Here are the things that we're going to make sure we do, not things that we don't do. The things that aren't on the list, those are things we don't do. So if you go into cabin 0, where there are 6 bins for dry goods, and you open the refrigerator and there's 6 bins for refrigerated food, there's also a bin that's marked everyone. So in the everyone bin goes the leftovers. And the thing that's just impressive to me about that is the leftover bin. We've had to change the size of the leftover bin because it wasn't big enough.
Wow.
The bin that they're sharing together. We had purchased one that was the same size. Didn't work. We had to go up to another size, and then went up to another size.
Really?
Because they're like, okay, hey, or they're knocking on each other's doors. Hey, I have, these leftover TV dinners or something like, and they're like sharing together. So yeah, Charles was, that's exciting. I probably have, I know you can kind of see the table over here with all of my junk, and I'm sure one of Charles's books is probably right around here. Not too
Well,
far.
I'm just so glad that after that interview that you were as impacted by Charles as I was, because that book, To End Homelessness, there's so much incredible content in it. And that you took that knowledge and applied it is so phenomenal. The overall spectrum, especially when, as you were talking about the sharing bins, when you create a community, a space where people are safe and they have their needs met, it creates an environment to give. It creates that availability emotionally to want to share. It gets them out of the scarcity mentality. And it's amazing how giving homeless people are, because in the homeless outreaches that I've done, I've been to Skid Row. I went to Albertsons and spoke with the managers and asked if they would donate food. And the manager smiled and he's like, meet me around the side. And he had 2 shopping carts almost filled with baked goods that they were going to throw away. And I went to Skid Row and it was just tents as far as you could see, blocks and blocks and blocks of tents. And I would give out food. And one of the first things that they would do would go and take it to share with everyone else. It was the same way in San Diego. When I would go and give food, the first thing that they would want to do is share it with other people. And so one of the biggest things that I've been trying to disassemble is the stigma when it comes to homeless people, because there's so many judgments that people place on them that they, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, but really they have hearts of gold. There's so many good people out there. They just found themselves in a circumstance that they just need help to get out of. And for these emergency shelters, for you to give them a safe haven for 3 months to help get them stabilized, especially the showers. People don't realize what a resource that is, because if you're homeless and you're living out of your car, how are you going to get ready for a job interview and go in smelling nice and looking professional to get a job unless you seem hygienic, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so
some have been creative and they purchase a gym membership, or they a membership at the Y, and they go there to shower. But there's a stigma with that as well. So yeah, we have been, this just having the showers. I mean, we host an event at the church every other Saturday, and the name of that event is the power of a shower. And we just invite people to come. There's no judgment. All they need to do is come and they register, and we get their information. And we're not getting all kinds of information, just who they are, kind of where they slept the night before, that kind of thing. They have an opportunity to shower. They get a hot meal. We have Carrie and her Carrie's extended hand, I think it is, or Carrie's helping hand. Carrie and her mother, they do the lunch, and and I'm not talking about they don't put together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I mean, they're putting together a hot meal with chafing dishes and everything. Some of the food that we pick up through our food ministry, we pick up small containers of fruit from various markets that goes on the dessert table. And Carrie and her mom they take such great care of people. They literally fold out a table, they put tablecloths on the tables, and people pull up their chairs, or they're sleeping, or they're eating on the grass of the church underneath the trees. But they also have an opportunity to get fresh clothing. So and oftentimes they'll just tell us, can you throw these in the dumpster? And we go, well, we would throw them in the dumpster, but why don't you go discard them? You empower them to go toss that away, and they're walking out of there 2 or 3 inches taller, because they have been treated with dignity. They have had a great meal, and they're free to take some lunch home or take it to someone else. And yeah, it's just, and we now have we've had volunteers, and the volunteers, it's one of those things that kind of grows. Now we're having probably anywhere from 10 to 15 people shower, and now we have like 10 to 15 volunteers who, when the people come, they're recognized. We call them by their name. We have social service providers there who reconnect with them because they've been looking for them for, a month or so. Yeah, and it's been a blessing. That's part of why we also did the mental health first aid. So, if someone's kind of raging, you don't just, tell them, hey, be quiet, you need to behave yourself, whatever. It's like, hey, what's going on? You lower your tone of voice. You don't join them in yelling. You say, hey, I understand. Hey, do you want an extra cupcake, or you want an extra fruit bowl? And you will be surprised how that will change. That will change a person's attitude, change their heart. In that moment, they're no longer raging, and they really just want to connect. They hang out. And like I said, we don't try to kick them off the church property. We've been blessed. I mean, I can tell you, as a pastor of the church, the church is 66 years old. I've been there the last 20. The mortgage has been paid off. The property is paid for. And so we get a chance to use it and really say, why is it that God placed us on this corner? He placed us on that corner to be a good neighbor. We share the same first name. We're Meridian Baptist Church. The elementary school is Meridian Elementary. So we're obviously in the same family. We're good neighbors, and we're part of the same family. Kind of is the joke. And so that's our connection with the school district, and whether it be the 7-Eleven across the street or the Arco station, we're all trying to, or the Chevron station now, it's changed again. But we're really trying to, we're just trying to be responsible neighbors, because the Bible tells us, and that as much as it depends on us, we ought to try to live in peace with others. And that's really where we're coming from.
Absolutely. And especially as you were describing that communication, and I wish that more people realize this, people will mirror back what you project at them. So if someone is having an issue and they're raging, as you were talking about, like, they'll mirror back. So typically, as you were describing, if you're calm towards them, it helps stabilize things. And then you can actually communicate on a healthy level to realize what was the underlying cause to lead to those angry emotions. The other thing I wanted to touch on that I find so beautiful is them throwing away their clothes, because there's something psychologically that happens in that moment, that they are throwing away their past self, and today they're born anew and going forward into, a brighter reality with food and with a new look because of their perception and how they perceive themselves. And so that's so empowering. We have about 7 minutes left of the show. If you were to give advice to a church that wants to follow this same model, what advice would you give them?
The advice I'd give them is advice that we received in the process that we went through. And that is, when you start down this avenue, or start down that project avenue, don't quit. Because it's easy to be discouraged. Just keep pressing through. Admit that you have an issue and tell everybody that you possibly can. Share with them the issue that you're going through, and be willing to ask for help. So that'd be the two things I'd say. Don't quit, number one, absolutely. And the second one is be willing to ask for help. You don't have to know it all. I know anything about building, about construction. People have blessed me. I know way more about how to build than I ever imagined I'd ever know as a pastor. But it's because I didn't know how to do it. But here we are today with 6 cabins. We want to expand eventually to 10. We want the pilot project to go beyond December 31st of this year. The city is telling us they want it to go beyond, be successful. And so we're all on the same page. We want it to be successful. We want to report that it's successful, and then we want to turn it into something that is there on the property permanently. We don't have to worry about picking them up and moving them somewhere else.
That's fantastic advice. And when it comes to working with the city, because I was discussing this earlier on Talk of the Town, and what would be future steps to working towards ending homelessness in San Diego when it comes to working with the city? And with your knowledge and reading Charles Surrett's book, Co-Housing and the End of Homelessness, do you feel like we could work with the city and get approval on land and actually build a large co-housing community? Because some of they have co-housing communities all over the United States. But if we were able to find land and work with the city, do you think that that would be a possibility maybe in the next few years to create a co-housing community in San Diego?
Yes, I do. I firmly believe it's possible. And I think one of the things that's important in doing that is we've got to check our egos at the door. If we're willing to check our egos at the door and talk about the solution and being a part of the solution, not waving the flag, I own it, I'm the one that came up with it, but that we were part of the solution, then we'll get there. We'll get to, and if we don't solve homelessness, the last quote I'll give you is I often quote Peter Seidler, the owner of the Padres. And I remember a conversation with him talking about ending homelessness. And he said, Rolland, we can do all that we can, but it's not a disappointment to finish best in show. We may not solve it, we may not get everyone into housing, but we ought to make the effort, enough of effort to be best in show. We gave it our best, is what I've taken from that quote from Peter.
I love that. And it's true. You know, there are certain people who are homeless that it's a matter of choice. They like the freedom. They don't want to be housed. And, you know, there is free country. You can make that choice for yourself. But I think for men like you and I, we want to help those who are ready to make change. And for the people that are ready, that, like you said, leave your ego at the door. I love that. To be willing to set yourself aside and put others' needs first, and recognizing the bigger picture behind all of it, creating that safe space so like these women and children can find the healing they need and they can graduate into something greater. And those success stories can continue to compound and grow together. And it's just such an inspiration. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to be wrapping up here in just a minute, but I just want to remind our listeners, you've been listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM, Descanso, serving the greater San Diego area. I'm your host, Mitchell Murphy. This has been Alive to Thrive. We've been interviewing Reverend Rolland Slade from Amikas and talking about emergency housing for women and children. And during the last minute that we have, do you have any closing words? And will you please share your website one more time for how people can get in touch with your organization?
Okay, so they can, well, I'll say again, thank you, Mitch. Being with you has been a pleasure, and I've learned. And thank you again for the introduction to Charles Surrett and co-housing, and just the creativity behind that just was so inspiring to me. And you can reach me through Meridian Baptist Church. That's simply www.meridianbaptistchurch, or through Amikas, which is meridianbaptist.com or amikas.org. So either one of those, or you can Google me and you can find me, I'm sure, anywhere on the World Wide Web. But make sure it's Rolland with 2 L's and it's Eastland.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the world. Thank you for the lives that you've been changing, and continue to keep up the good work. And you will most definitely, we'll do another interview in the future and we'll keep up on your progress.
All right. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you. You have God bless. Have a wonderful day.
All right. You too.
Thank you all for tuning in to Alive to Thrive. Remember, we're not on this earth merely to survive. We're alive to thrive. We'll see you all next week.